Pierre Bourdieu is a French social theorist who contributed to the debate over materialism. Bourdieu suggests that there are different ways to think of capital, to include not only money and machines, but cultural and social resources. He argues that traditional Marxism is too simple, as capital comes in many forms other than strictly economics. Though he acknowledges that economic is always the main route, Bourdieu challenges Marx's proposition that our economic life determines our ideas, since the innovation of habitus was a way to see not just ideas, but a series of bodily dispositions of how we speak, act, and move. He defines habitus a means of thinking and acting according to a code of behavior, accepted as proper for one class or class fraction, where habitus is inscribed unconsciously for the dynamics of education and reproduction which influence individuals to stand, feel, and think in a certain way. In relation to the previous statement, a horror film known as Us fits with Bourdieu's definition of habitus. The film displays a theme of duality in human nature, symbolized by the occurrence of doppelgangers, where one lives in a happy mundane world, as the other lives in a terrifying dark world. The contrast in environments portrayed by the main character Adeline show the changes where one had to adjust in speaking, acting, and moving within their society or class fractions, as the film unveils that young Adeline and her doppelganger, Red, swap places when they first encounter each other in the Hall of Mirrors in Santa Cruz. The film doesn't necessarily display them adapting to the new lives per se, but we can infer that habitus is present because each had to embody the roles of the other, being essential for them to fit into society. This was demonstrated when older Adeline comes back to Santa Cruz for vacation and meets her doppelganger once again. Some examples of habitus that was seen with tethered Adeline in modern society are the use of education, which influenced individuals to stand, feel, and think in a certain way. From this statement, I can infer that once Adeline's parents found her from the funhouse and realized she couldn't speak, she must have had some formal education, because she could speak years later on. This enforces on the fact that Adeline has some economic prosperity, from inferences of the house he stayed in, the car they have, and to be back where things began. And in contrast, the real Adeline, portrayed as Red, had to adjust to the consumptions of eating rabbits and to live underneath with the tethered. I assume that she had no formal education, because Red's way of speaking was rough and coarse. It projected the sense that she hadn't used her voice in a very long time, which makes sense because in the tethered realm, nobody could speak or talk. To further expand on this concept, in the clip where the filmmaker showed a side-by-side comparison of them dancing, it relates to the broader sense of education, since one's dancing was clean and precise, as the other had no structure or poise and movements due to the access of dance recitals from the outside realm. Furthermore, this touches base with Bourdieu's argument on how there are different forms of capital, other than strictly economic. His four types of capital are economic, social, cultural, and symbolic. Economic capital is defined as economic resources that are transferable to money. An example of this in the film is when the Wilsons came to Santa Cruz, stayed at a nice preserve, had a boat, and a car. Social capital is defined as connections that one has with groups of people, such as family or social clubs, so networks and interactions with people. In the film, both Adeline and Red had the most connections due to their relations and experience with both worlds. However, the real Adeline, known as Red, had a stronger social capital because she is the only one who could speak, understand the being of the tethered, and has experience from the outside world. The social capital that she has infers to why she was the leader and how she has the power to organize the tethered to escape and take revenge among the counterparts. Cultural capital is defined as a knowledge of education that reinforces class hierarchy and distinction between classes. Bourdieu argues that there are three general types, which are embodied, objectified, and institutionalized capital. So, embodied capital, habitus, are dispositions of the body to behave in certain ways. An example is that Red internalizes society of the tethered as Adeline internalizes society from the outside world. Objectified capital distinguishes the owners as a member of a given class. An example of this is that the tethered society doesn't necessarily have anything to distinguish class with, whereas Adeline has a yacht, car, and property to display her cultural capital. Lastly, institutionalized capital is distinguished mainly from academic qualifications. In the movie, Adeline has the resources to learn how to speak and dance, where in contrast, Red and the tethered community are abandoned and don't have the resources to learn because of government actions. Fourth one is symbolic capital. It occurs when social and cultural capital is misrecognized as individual merit. This is seen when Red and Adeline first swapped places and then had to adjust to their new environment. Furthermore, some strengths that I found in Bourdieu's theory is that habitus still maintained relevancy in modern society, and that everybody displays habitus unconsciously. His model depicts that habits are internalized from an early age and in turn becoming inescapable. An example is that when we are born, we are taught how to walk, talk, and think, and these behaviors become ingrained within us to a point of no escaping. We keep these behaviors for the rest of our lives, no matter what changes occurs. A criticism of Bourdieu's theory is that he seems to ignore individuals who come to like things from the outside class. For example, when the working class comes and appreciates high classified scholars, individuals in their class were not taught to appreciate things like these as a child, but they happen to enjoy years later on. This further connects to the cultural interest in the representation between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, because both classes consume and are exposed to the same media, music, entertainment, and so forth. Although Bourdieu's theory may seem vague and broad in some sociological aspects, his theory is useful because he brings a micro-macro theory instead of strictly just a one-sided one. He brings both types of perspective, such as structuralism as society and individual known as agency, into his work. Examples of this include individuals adapting to the norms of society,